Okay, we'll come back to week 3 lecture. So today we are going to talk about distance and the similarities. So this will be a quantitative measurement for the similarity between two objects. So two objects in our case is data points, and you know each data point is a vector. So from a previous lectures, we just learned how to do a matrix multiplication, right? I hope you still remember a quick review, okay? You still remember if you have this 2 by 3 matrix, and this is a 2 by 3, and then in order to multiplicate with another matrix has to be 3 by something else, okay? So this has to be 3 by 6. So I showed you, you need to arrange these two matrices in this particular order layout. So you can have a squared matrix here. So because this is 3 by 3, just make sure the inner dimension has to be matched. If this is not a squared matrix, you know your layout is not correct. With this, then you just see, okay, the output for this product is this rectangular, which is 2 by 6, all right? So in order to compute the value of the first element here, you have to do element-based multiplication, then sum them together and get this value. And then you do the first column here with 3, with the second row here, and then you get the second element here. Then you do this repeatedly and then fill in this output matrix. So we are going to do this in computer many times, and basically all the operations you are doing in the machine learning is something about this matrix to matrix multiplication. So this is the fundamental operations in all the AI system, machine learning systems. So that's why maybe 2 years ago, I think some Google investigators found a way to do this multiplication between two matrices algorithm, which save some steps in the middle, so make the matrix multiplication slightly faster than before. The previous algorithm, you have to do a lot of multiplications and summation. So this is an ordinary way to do this. But if you have some trick, can do this slightly faster, even see 5% improvement of speed, that will be a huge impact in the field because you save the multiplication time by 5%. That's a huge improvement. In our case, we next is we try to consider a special case to make this as a 1, 2, 3, so become a vector. And then in order to multiplicate with another vector, this vector has to be 3 by 1, okay? So the inner product, you get a 1 by 1 value, so it's the scalar. So this called inner product of two vectors. The green vector is 1 by 3, and the blue vector is 3 by 1. So the inner product of this is 1. Okay, so this inner product is just a special case of the matrix multiplication. So basically, that's what we learned in the last 2 weeks, right? Okay. If you have any comments or feedback, see how we can learn this more effectively, let me know. So otherwise, we just keep this pace, and too fast, too slow, give me feedback so I can adjust. Or I believe as a biology background, you may get lost. Why we need to know this? how we link what we learn, this kind of a theory or the way to do the computation back to my daily work. Anything to do with. Maybe we slightly start to review, okay, what you can do. Today, for example, you can start to measure the similarity between data points, and you start to compare. If you have two samples, and each sample described in different variables, and then you can compare samples. Then you have 3 samples, you can compare 1 with 2, 1 with 3, 3 with 2. You can have a pairwise comparison. So you can start to use, because you know how to compare stuff, and that's what we need to learn today to get the similarity between samples, between data points, and the similarity. 1 minus the similarity or negative similarity is the distance. So there can be distance similarity can be used interchangeably, and they are the same thing. So today's lecture, we will focus on reinforce your understanding of inner product. As I said, you can do inner product. You can also do outer product. If you do outer product, you just turn this around 1 by 3 and this into 3 by 1 and that one into 1 by 3, and your product will be 3 by 3. That's called outer product. But in data science, in machine learning, we use inner product, which in this way, 2 vectors you compute and get a single number. Inner product will be used, see, 90% of the time you will see. Outer product, sometimes we use it, but not very common. So we will reinforce the understanding of this and with some geometric interpretation. Then we will introduce cosine distance. We know Euclidean distance, and to compute from one position to another in the Cartesian coordinate system using Pythagoras theorem. But the cosine distance is more commonly used in data science, in machine learning, compared to Euclidean distance. Okay, I would say this may be used 70% of time compared to Euclidean distance 30% of time. This is just estimation, but in general. So we need to have an understanding of what cosine distance is. Then I will introduce this pairwise matrix distance, just like a matrix. Then the element indicate how far from one point to another, so you have this. And then I will explain the MDS, multidimensional scaling. So prepare us for the next week's lecture for PCA. Then we will still have some time to touch base on the QC of single cell data, and also, most importantly, I will introduce this transcription bursting concept. Okay. So we will start from a very simple review of trigonometry, and those are some of these definitions from a high school textbook. Just a quick review, just make sure you have that information. So if you have a triangle and then this right angle here, then so this is adjacent, then the hypotenuse, and then this ratio between these two is the cosine of theta between these two. You can see the two vectors. Okay. So cosine is defined by adjacent divided by hypotenuse. Another concept is the Pythagoras theorem. So this is we can use to compute distance between 2 points. Okay. So if there's this 5, there's 3, 5, 4, 3. So this distance. The good thing about this theorem is it's applied to not only 2D, 3D, but even in the high dimension. So if you have a 3D and then the distance from A to D is a square root of 5 squared plus 3 squared plus 2 squared. Okay, just three numbers squared and summed together. And then if you have a higher dimension, say 4, then you have a 5, 3, 2 plus another number at fourth dimension, then square root, and still use the same formula. So this is not very commonly used, but I can still find it in the high school textbook. So this is the angle alpha and the beta. Here is hypotenuse, which is unit length as 1. If you have this, then you can derive all the lengths of those lines, each individually. So it just takes some time, but eventually you can figure it out by the definition of cosine and the sine. Here is a formula we are going to use in one of these demonstration of this the cosine formula, but not necessary. So you can, if you have the concept of this, and you can use. If not, it's okay. So we have different ways to validate the equation. So the cosine, which is the difference between alpha and beta, which is here. Okay, if you can see my cursor here, and this length, cosine alpha minus beta, is a product cosine alpha, cosine beta plus sine alpha, sine beta. Okay, we will refer back to this page later when we need it. Okay, so this is just 3 pages in order you to prepare some very basic terminologies. Another important is unit circle. Again, we tried in MATLAB. A norm is a vector which the magnitude, the length. So you divide every element in your vector. So this V may contain two numbers. Okay, you can have a X, V, Y, V. Okay, 2 numbers. Then to normalize it, you divide by, this is a norm to indicate how long it is. And basically, this is a single number, say 5. Okay, so this vector is, length is 5. So you divide 5. So basically, you have your first divided by 5, second value divided by 5. So you create a normalized version of your vector. This vector could be very long, but you normalize it, come back on this circle. On this circle, there are some example points like 1, 0, 0, 1, and here 1/2, and the square root 3 over 2. So if you do norm, or you take norm function, or you compute its magnitude is all 1s. So those are the vectors, unit vectors on this unit circle in order to point you to the direction. In MATLAB is to indicate this operation is element-based. So if you do dot multiplication or dot division, then each element in there will divide by this value. Okay? in this case, it doesn't matter because if you ignore the dot, you still divide by a single number. So the operation will be the same. What will make difference if you have a v divided by u, okay? So in this case, if you don't put this dot here, the MATLAB, another language, Julia, will consider this as a division between two matrices, okay? So this operation will be very different. So in our case, we can ignore this if you try in MATLAB, because this is a single number. By default, it's element-based division. Okay, so this unit circle will provide our Cartesian coordinate system. What that means is you can pick two vectors, which if they're orthogonal to each other, you can use the pair as your coordinate system, x and y axis. Okay, so what that means is here, if I select this as my x-axis, this as my y-axis, I have a pair which very clear, and this is 1, 0, and this is 0, 1. So the pair I selected two vectors in this unit circle, which is a pair 1, 0, and 0, 1. Okay, so this pair is my coordinate system, my Cartesian coordinate system. I can select this as my x-axis. This time I will select so this is square root 3 over 2 and then 1/2. So if I decide to use this as my x-axis, I can have to select another one, which either this or that. I have two options. So where it is, this is supposed to be so if I decide to use this pair, is this correct? I don't know. It's supposed to be. So this is it. Then this is basically I select this as my x-axis, and this is my y-axis. I can select any two, basically, if they are 90 degrees. So this is my system. They can have. So I can select any pairs. So if I rotate this to a certain degree, in this case will be 30 degree. If I rotate my coordinate system from this to this, nothing should change with the data points if I have any data points here. And the same thing was here. But it's just a rotation, okay? So if you rotate your coordinate system, so all the data points refer to or in this coordinate system also will be rotate. So if you rotate it in this way, basically you are rotating your data points to that way. So this is a concept which we use the orthogonal two vectors perpendicular to each other as our reference coordinate system. Depends on which two you select in this coordinate system, unit circle. This can be extended to high D. So if you have a unit sphere, then you have X, Y, Z. And these three vectors will orthogonal to each other and form a vector set. So this is called, we can call it a vector set. So this pair of vector set can be used as a coordinate system. Okay, so this is a concept we need to have on your mind from now on. Any questions for this? For this part? I believe it's important. Okay. You may see how you found the orthogonal vectors. For the 2D, you just flip this and put one negative in one of the numbers. For 3D, harder to find, but for higher dimension, there are algorithms that you can help you to find. Give you one vector with some numbers to indicate this vector direction. Then you can find orthogonal, not only one solution, but you have many different solutions. So we will have function to help you to do those. Okay. So come back to this, just review, and then to A times B, two matrices, multiplication. So that's what I just drew on the board here, and what is inner product, what is outer product. Okay. So in when we write this a variable, say v or u, we don't know. By default, I said we should be a vertical vector, so you have x, v, y, v, z, v. And this also should be u, x, y, z. But some literature in the data science maybe consider this as a horizontal vector. So if you do dot product, you need to know which one you need to transform first. So this will be dot product. But if you have horizontal, then you have to do transpose the second first. So that's always get confused sometimes, but this if you use the Dirac notation, then you define the vectors in using this bar, the variable name, then this arrow, to indicate this is vector of x, e, vertical, and then use to indicate this horizontal. So that's why if you do this, so let's change this to U. So that's why if you write something like this, you mark bar and multiplicate with V. So you know this is a horizontal vector multiplied by a so basically this gave you the idea, okay, so this will be the dot product. So it's clear, you won't be confused. See, is this outer product or this outer product, or this inner or this inner? So this is no confusion. That's why you can also simplify this as U times V. So this brackets always indicate this inner product. So this is a notation used in quantum computing literature, and the people to represent the dot product or inner product using this greater and then minus sign around it. By the way, this is called tensor product, which is a different, very different notation, different way to compute. And this is also, you always see something like this. In the middle, there's a matrix. In the middle, if you have a matrix, V, okay? So this is supposed to be a squared matrix. If this is 1 by 3, and then in the middle you have a 3 by 3 matrix, then here you have a 3 by 1. So this operation will be valid, and we can do the computation. Okay, for the dot product, you can consider this for the given coordinate system. This vector in red will be decomposed into two vectors. One goes to x direction, and the other goes y direction. You can do the same thing for this blue longer vector, and to decompose it into x and y direction. So the multiplication of red and the blue can be decomposed into the direction in the x-axis direction. So this, can you see it? Yeah. So multiplicate, so ax multiplied by bx plus bx times ay. However, because these two directions are orthogonal to each other, the product will be 0, okay? So they canceled out, basically. And then ax times by, because orthogonal to each other, there's no impact on each other, so the result is 0. Then you go to the y direction, and these two decomposed components will be multiplied the magnitude together. And then you get the results. The dot product of A and B, these two vectors, will be ax times bx plus ay times by. So this is the so-called geometric interpretation of why we are doing this. We're doing this element by element. So xv times xu v times yu plus z zu if you do dot product. Right, so if you do dot product, you are doing x v times x u plus y v times y u z v times z u. Three terms because they are 3D. The other ones between xv times yu or xv times zu, they all orthogonal to each other, so we don't consider their combinations. So this is like 3D. That's what I write in here. Okay. Any questions? So far, so good, right? Okay. Now this is the most important equation we will introduce today. So this is two given vector u and v, and their dot product can be writing into this formula. U is these two bars around u is how long this vector is. So these two don't have to be in the unit circles. They are not a unit vectors. They are just any given vectors. You can compute the dot product between these two vectors as magnitude of u times magnitude of v times cosine theta, which is the angle between them. Magnitude of u, the length of a vector, is a number, okay? V is a number. So this is a single number, this is a single number. Cosine theta is a single number. So all the product at the end is a single number. It's a scalar variable. So we are going to derive and see why this is true. And then I will show you what's the application. How can we use this relationship? So this can be applied to any given two vectors. I will approve it by using a very special arrangement, which I'm going to rotate my coordinate system to let my uv, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this direction as my new coordinate system. So basically, I will use u as one of these x-axis. So if I have a vector, which u here, another, make it longer so you can see clearer. Okay, even longer. So I'm very lazy. I just put what I have to approve into my x-axis. And then my y-axis will be still here, okay? Okay, my u will be x u y u. So the coordinates, the position is here, because this I already put it on the x-axis, so this becomes 0. So I can replace this into 0. Okay. Then my second vector V, the position is x, v, y, v. So two values. And then, of course, this is theta. So that's basically the setup, what I wrote here. Okay. So now let's write what is the multiplication of these two. So this two multiplication is v u. To write this out will be x v y v times x u 0 transpose. So this is dot product. You have to have two vectors. If I write in vector formula, it will be something like this. Okay. U 0. So this will be this times that. Plus y times 0. So this term is a 0, so I just cross this out. So basically, I will be left with these two. So now look at this one here. This gave you how long this u is. So this value equal to the bar of u. So this gave you the length of that. So I can replace this with that. So this gave you this replace this. So now my equation is the product of these two vectors equal to the coordinate of xv times the length of this. And you don't have this term because this is 0. Now I'm going to replace this guy here. So this is, so what is this is? So this value here, xv, equal to the magnitude of v times cosine theta. By definition, this length divided by the magnitude of v is the cosine theta. So that you can rewrite that into this. Now we plug this in back to here. in order to get the results, which V magnitude cosine theta times U. So we convert this to that. That's our final results. So put them together, we have the general formula, which UV, VU doesn't matter, so UV magnitude of U magnitude V cosine theta. So this is a formula we just need to remember, okay? So this is a formula we need to remember, and this I just use a very lazy way to show you, okay, if this relationship is there, this relationship is true if you have some arrangement like this, okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, doesn't matter. It's a dot product. Dot product, if you UV, VU, it should be the same. Where is the transposition? X mu 0 here. Oh, yeah, that's right. So if it doesn't really matter, so it's just the same. Yeah. So this is for dot product in order to compute. I said that there are other ways to approve that this relationship. This is a solution with using the geometric way. So A and B as two vectors, and A and B can be decomposed into X and Y. So you can decompose this. For example, this is A, then you decompose this into A magnitude with a cosine theta, and this Y will be magnitude of V times sine theta. Basically, this is a decomposition into alpha, the X and the Y different, very similar to where this place, to decompose into X and Y components. Then with this formula, then you plug this relationship in, and then you can get this, and the difference between these two angles is theta. So at the end, you approve this relationship. Let's spend some time to figure it out. And there's another way. So they found you only need a Pythagoras theorem to prove this. Okay, two vectors dot product equal to their magnitude multiplied by cosine theta between these two vectors. I don't think it can directly figure out. You may spend some time to stare this. Okay, so yellow start, okay? So just remember this relationship. So you can go back and think about, okay, what that means, how to write What that means with the 2 bars around, without 2 bars, okay? So there's a particular name for this. So you arrange the formula that you can have AB. So AB are 2 vectors, and then so the length of this is so-called projection of A onto the B, how long it is. Just think about the shadow. So if you put a light on there, on the A, and then the shadow will be such long on the B. If you think B is x-axis, then you will use this formula to compute. If give you the A, how long it is, then you project on the B. You can have the coordinates of A if you use the B as an x-axis. I don't know if you understand this, but this is the idea of a projection. So you use this relationship to find the projection, the length of this projection. You can use this to compute the angle between 2 vectors, because you can rewrite this relationship into cosine theta equal to this 2u times v divided by the length of u times length of v. Okay, so this tells you the angle between these 2 vectors. So this is the first usage. Another second usage is to do this projection, as I said. You can use this relationship with this equation. This equation tells you the length of this d, see, this d is the projection of one vector onto another. How long this is? This is basically vu times v divided by the u. Okay, based on how long this is, you normalize it. This part, you have a unit vector of your this, and then you use this v divided by times this unit vector. You get the projection, the distance, the length of your projection. You see, it's very easy to compute. Let's see here. I don't know. See, this is important. So let's see this formula here. Tell you how long this part is. So this part is the projection of vector A onto the B, because by definition the cosine theta A of magnitude is the length of this bar here. How to compute it? You just compute A and B product divided by B. So this is very easy to compute. You have a dot product divided by a number. This simple computation, AB dot product divided by B, is how long this bar is. Is you project your vector A onto the B, and what the length is. Okay, if you have this bar here, if you have the projection, and also you have a magnitude of A, it's very easy to compute, both of them. And you can compute from this vector A, this point, the distance to this line, straight line defined by B. So you can compute this part. You can compute this part as a distance to a line. So if I give you a point, a number with vector A indicate, you can very quickly compute its distance to a line which defined by B using this Pythagoras theorem. So you know this, you know that, you can easily compute the distance. So there's another application. So far we have 3 applications for this relationship. Compute the angles between 2 vectors. Okay, so cosine theta can be computed with this formula. Very easy. Dot product divided by both magnitude. We can project one vector onto another, which also very easy to compute, which dot product divided by the vector magnitude, which you want to use as a x-axis. You project your A vector onto B. You can use this relationship because you know the magnitude, you know the projection, you can compute the distance from a dot to the line. So we have some applications you need to compute this distance from one dot to a line here. The final is to change your coordinate system. So now if you look at this, by default we should have a x-axis in the 1, 0 and y-axis in the 0, 1. By default we have this coordinate system. And that's why we define A and B, the 2 vectors in general. But if you decide to use B as your x-axis, which you will select this and then another. So for this newly given coordinate system, so what's the coordinates for A? So you have to project A onto the B to get this one. You have to project this into a new y-axis. So you have to do 2 projections in order to compute the new coordinate system for A if you use B as your x-axis. Does it make sense? Okay. So this will help you to quickly compute the new coordinates in order to change your reference x-axis. So now we assumed it's this, but if you use B as a coordinate system, you have to recompute what's the position of A with respect to B as your x-axis. So that's the 3 applications. 4 applications, okay? So this to quantify the similarity between 2 vectors. So the cosine theta, if you rotate the theta from 0 to 360, and this value will be between -1 and 1. So this similarity can be negative. Okay, if you have 2 vectors goes to same direction, okay, the similarity is the largest. The value is 1, cosine theta. But if you have 2 vectors goes to orthogonal, okay, the similarity is 0. Okay, no similarity that goes to orthogonal direction. If there's 2 to the different direction, then similarity is -1 because cosine 180 degree is -1. So this is the measurement between similarity. We can use 1 minus similarity or simply negative similarity as a distance. There are different ways. If you do 1 minus this, so this distance will be in 0 and 2 range. You can simply add a negative sign here to also define the cosine distance. In that way, you still have a -1 to 1, all right, as a range. As I mentioned, this cosine distance is more commonly used, much more in data science. If you know language model, large language model is based on transformer structure of this neural network. And within the transformer, there's this structure called attention. So this is something called attention. This multi-layer dot product results. In this attention, you have your query. Basically, if you put something in there, the language model, the framework will first transform your input into token, and the token, basically you chop it into the fragments, and the token will be translated into vector. See, a vector called Q. This is a long vector, and this vector will give to the machine and to have a key vector. Key vector, and then we'll also have a value vector for that key. So in transformer to this attention structure, the computation, if you look at here, this is a dot product between the key and your query. By the way, they all use horizontal vector, so that's why you see this Q times K transpose, but this is a dot product. What they compute here, this is a cosine distance, basically. Cosine similarity. Okay? Because we know cosine similarity is a dot product between two vectors, especially these two vectors has been already normalized, have a length equal to 1. So as you can see, the most important computation at the end is dot product. No matter how this framework is complicated, at the end you just want to compute your query with any key in the predefined, basically. They are not fixed, but predefined, have been trained of these key values. Do you want to search, say, your query and match which key in this framework, and then it will value that particular key, and there's also position information and for the context. But I just want to show you cosine similarity is more important. So this is normalized. Basically, even though this may be very long, but you bring them back to the unit circle. Maybe, for example, the unit circle is somewhere here. For each of them divided by the magnitude of itself, basically we are bring this V back to unit circle, and U and V bring back to unit circle. Okay, in this way, you have just dot product between two unit vector. Okay, that's what the cosine distance similarity is about. If you consider the Euclidean distance between these two, there are 2 times of this cosine distance. So there's a relationship between that. If you normalize. Let's see if we need a break. Yeah, take a break. Okay, it's already too much. Okay, so we mentioned that this can be used for projection and to compute the distance from a data point to a straight line. Here are some examples how to use this. For instance, I have a lot of data here. So you can consider this as some data points in this 2D space. Okay, each of them supposed to be a vector, right? So you have so many. Now I want to see, okay, I want to select, so this is your current coordinate system. So now I try to see, okay, I want to select a new axis. So if I want to use this as my new axis, then by default you should have something like this, right? I can select certainly any angles as my new coordinate system. So the question I want to have is, what's the projection, the length of those data points onto my new axis coordinate? Basically, I have to compute. For example, if using this as a data point as an example, so that's a vector. So its projection onto the original coordinates is this place. That's how long this x-axis for this data point is. But if I want to compute its projection onto the new axis, I have to compute its projection onto here. So this position, this length, it's a new projection of this position. It was here, but on here, you think it seems longer, right? If you do this for all the projections, for all the data points project on here, you get a new coordinates for all the data points onto here. And if you put them together, and you will see they're longer than their original. So what that means is, if you use the two green one as a new coordinate system, your projection of your data points onto x-axis, overall will be longer than its original. So the effect is you rotate your coordinate system in order to show more diversity of your data points onto one of these dimensions. Yeah, your question.
This way to make you see smaller variation.
Yes, smaller variation will be in this. If you project on this y, the variation is small.
I mean the projection on the something that is
Longer the variation is larger.
Variations between the points.
No, if you look at this dimension compared to the original, so the variation is bigger.
Yes.
Yeah. So the smallest value to largest, or the distance between the will be larger. So that's the purpose of the PCA. PCA is a technique which you want to rotate this coordinate system until you found a particular angle, which to show you the most spread data points relationship. So in this process, you want to compute the projection of your data points onto the coordinate system, onto your vector. So that's why you need to compute this quite a lot. Compute many times to get the projection. So if you rotate to to that direction. So if you have a new axis go this way and y this way, so the projection will be very narrow. So if all the class superimpose onto each other smaller. So that will not be the best solution for your particular PCA selection. So we will discuss this later. So for the distance to a line, this is a SVM application. You want to find a straight line, for example, here, and you want to maximize the distance between the point you want to separate, because the SVM is try to find a cut which defined by a line, which this line will separate two group of cluster of points as separate as possible. So you want to find a line which away from the interface between these two groups. So you want to maximize the distance between data points to the line. So that's why you need to compute points to the line distance. Again, dot product will help you, okay, to make the computation very simple. As I said, this computation is very simple. Dot product between vectors. It's just multiplication elements and sum them together, become single number. So that's why the multiplication is addition, okay? So that's why the adding machine, the computer, can do all these things because you rely on dot product quite a lot, all these operations. So this is some formula which people use to compute the distance from a point to a line. And then you need to, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we will revisit this when we talk about SVM. So the straight line can be defined by a vector, okay? There's certain formula, and then you can use, and then very easy to compute the distance. Let's come back to this page. So if you have orthogonal, how do you find the orthogonal vectors? So this 4, 2 is not on the unit circle, but you can divide by its magnitude and come back to normal. And this is orthogonal to that. So basically the slope, the product of slope is 0. The slope of these two should be if you compute the slope of this and the slope of that should be negative and reversed. There are some equations for 2Ds. You can just define this very easily. So you can confirm the dot product between these two is 0. Orthogonal vector site. So I have 0, 1, 1, 0 in there, and then you expand it to 3D. And this, for example, this set, you can use them as a 3D coordinate system, and to guarantee each pair orthogonal to each other, okay? So this is 3D. You can define 4D, higher dimension, same idea. So if you look at these 3 sets, 3 vectors, each pair of them have a dot product equal to 0, means they are orthogonal to each other, 3 of them. This is called the orthogonal matrix. So if you have orthogonal matrix, their product will be an identity matrix. So you can use orthogonal or unitary. So this is orthogonal and also normalized. And each vector in there has been normalized into a unit vector. Then this square matrix can be used as a rotation matrix, no matter it's 2D or 3D or higher dimension. Then there are linear independent dependent. So if you can get this value by combine different, so this is like 3 vectors, but the last vector is not independent because you can use combinations of these 2 somehow get this. If you cannot, then all of the 3 will be independent to each other. So that information will help you to compute a rank of a matrix. If you have somehow redundant, for example, this third column can be decomposed into the first column times 2, or the first column by add itself, then add the second column in order to get the third column. So these 3 are not independent. You only need first 2 in order to generate all of them. Well, you cannot do this for this particular matrix. So this matrix have a rank of 3. So each of these vectors are independent to each other. So basically, this tells you this matrix has to be in that particular dimension or occupy that space, 3D space. Well, if you have only rank 2, you don't have to utilize all the linear space to that higher dimension. So of the rank of this, supposed to be 2, I believe. So we can compute, use a function, and put the matrix in. We will try this in MATLAB. So this is a function in MATLAB to compute the rank, or provide orthogonal, also normal base. So if you do this also, A, you give the vector set, and this orthogonal will help you to find the orthogonal, the orthonormal matrix in order to this Q, you can use this as a coordinate system, as a X, Y, Z, 3 vector as a X, Y, Z axis. You can confirm that the norm of each unitary vector is 0. To do this orthogonal, the function, people use a so-called Gram-Schmidt process in linear algebra in order to find this orthonormal matrix. There are some procedures which we can, if you decide to read deeper, you can go. This is the source code basically to find those orthonormal matrix. Okay, so here is cosine distance. Then we already mentioned the Euclidean distance. How to compute the Euclidean distance between 2 vectors? You just one vector minus another and take a norm. Remember the definition of this. So if you have 2 vectors, then you just take the difference. So A, B, A minus B is the one between them. Then if you take a norm, then this is a Euclidean distance. Again, in the vector formula, it's very easy to compute, right? You know how to compute the distance, compute a difference between these two vectors, and it's just norm function. This is an example. So this you have a let's see. Yeah, so you have a position 3,5 to 6,9, then this difference. So this formula looks awesome, and it's just the same as this one. So you just have an index which I and j. So that means you have a set of the x which contains more than one vector. Then you just do the pairwise distance computation to get the a matrix ij. So this equation, so the bar, double bar means norm, right? And then xi, xj are two vectors you get out from a matrix X. This matrix contains a vector, say, let's see, x11, x12, x21, 22, xn1. So that's your vector. So you have a vector 1, vector 2, vector n. So this matrix is a collection of your data points, n data points. Well, this xi and xj, so if you, so for example, this is xi, this is xj. So you pick two of them out of this set, and you do the I minus xj. So this is just a difference between two vectors. And then you put a bar around it. This is a norm. So 2 means L2 norm. Without 2, we also, by default, L2 norm. So this 2 subscript here is redundant. But the square means because your distance is square root of everything, and then you have to take a square, and this is distance basically is the square of distance. Okay, so this gave you the value for a matrix of D matrix. So this is a D matrix. You have 1, 2 until n. This is 1, 2 until n. So each D is a squared Euclidean distance between two vectors. So basically, if you have a position here, say 25, say 25, means this value is between vector 1 and 2, so between these two vectors, and the distance is 25, distance square, and 1, 1 distance is 0, so in the middle of the diagonal, you have 0. There's no difference between them. And then you just fill up this big D using the ij. So index 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, n, and the 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. You fill this up. You don't have to recompute because they are symmetric. 25 here should be 25 here. You only compute one side of this squared matrix. So the D is called Euclidean distance matrix. Is that clear? No. So X is your input data. You have n element in there, n columns. Then you compute the distance between first pair, 1, 2, second pair, 1, 3, 1, 4, and you start to fill up this position depending on the distance between pairs. So this is the pairwise distance between points. This will be easy to understand. So just consider this example is Switzerland. There are different cities, Lausanne, Geneva, Zurich, Bern. So you have a distance between cities or distance by train. Okay, from Geneva to Bern is 101 kilogram per kilometer. So that's the D. That's this, what we compute. Right? So this is Euclidean distance matrix. So now your job is, if I gave you this, I'm not going to give you the map. I gave you the distance matrix, a table. Can you recompute, reconstruct this map? So the relative position of the city from the distance matrix, if you can put them back, that's the problem called multi-dimensional scaling, MDS. From a pairwise distance between data points to get the map of the projections of the data points, which satisfied the distance matrix of a given. Okay, so this is distance matrix. You know you compute using this equation, which different between data points and then norm. You also have another way to compute distance matrix, but it goes through so-called gram matrix. This is not too hard, right? You know how to compute the difference between vectors, then take a norm. That's the equation. Well, gram matrix make it even simpler. So I and J, we don't even compute the difference between, and you just do the dot products, xi, xj. So we gram matrix. So this is also and 1, 2 squared matrix. Okay. Instead of distance between pairs, we just have a dot product between elements. Okay, see dot. You fill them up. If you have a matrix of X, you don't even have to do the loop between them. You can just simply do this, the whole matrix, transpose, then multiplicate two matrices. Very easy to compute, very quickly, to get a gram matrix. And also, these two matrices can be converted into each other. So they are so we like a gram matrix better than distance matrix because this is so easy to compute. That's a literature in MATLAB. You just write it this way. You get this. You have this X representing your computer, then you transpose one of them and then multiplicate to itself. And then you get the interrelationship between all the points to themselves, where is basically this for each data point inside this data matrix. Well, the relationship, the values between them to tell you the similarity between each pair of these data points, okay? So this is the formula, how can you make change? So if you want to have change gram matrix, I say, okay, I need a distance matrix, and you can compute this. All other way around, if you given this, you can compute a gram matrix. But in general, we believe gram matrix is easy to compute. And so you can, when you need a distance matrix, you convert that to. So this maybe not make sense formula, but we can try in computer and to see, okay, oh, that's true eventually, okay? So we can play with this matrix Thursday to compute the distance matrix, compute the gram matrix, is how they interrelated. So this is a function to convert distance matrix, Euclidean distance matrix into gram matrix. So, as I described, the MDS, multi-dimensional scaling, is a problem we want to solve is to have this, to build the map. You know, Houston, College Station, Dallas, Austin, you have this pairwise distance. But if you don't know their position on the map, but you can have to construct, see, okay, Austin here, Houston here, you need to put College Station somewhere, and you have to put San Antonio. So if you have this, how can you reconstruct the map? So that's a problem. We start with build this gram matrix, and then to do this So the centralized data, yeah. So this eigen value, eigen decomposition. So if you look at the code, source code, so we need to have this distance matrix is given, right? We need to convert that into gram matrix. So that's a function. I do distance matrix convert to gram matrix. Once you have a gram matrix from a distance matrix, we do a eigen decomposition, eigenvalue problem, then to find the position it should put. So that's a solution for the so-called classical MDS algorithm. Okay, the important concept, the last income, very important concept is covariance matrix. For today, okay? So G is this dot product. So remember the dimension of this D matrix is n by n. N by n. Gram matrix is the same, n by n, same dimension. So here we have n samples, n or n data. We assume each sample or each data points is described by m by p variables. If the columns are the cells, then these are the gene expression of how many genes, p genes. So the covariance matrix will be p by p, a matrix, instead of n by n. Okay, so this is the difference first between your pairwise distance between data points, gram matrix between data points, and the covariance matrix. Covariance matrix is about the variables relationship between variables, not the relationship between points. So all this distance and between points, well, this covariance matrix is the similarity or difference between variables. Okay, so that's why you have a p by p matrix. This is very similar to gram matrix. Again, here is dot product. Basically, dot product between, So you get this from a compute X transpose X, and you get a gram matrix by X times X transpose. Okay, so looks how similar they are. This is a p by p, and this is n by n. So this is divided by n minus 1, just somehow normalize the magnitude of this dot product. This is also dot product if you consider this element, but it's by rows. And this dot product by columns. Can see, okay, there's applications for covariance matrix. So this is a compute the distance from, for example, this point, every point to the center. So this is the average of this cloud center. So the Mahalanobis distance is to compute every dots to the center here. So if you don't have this covariance matrix in the middle, then this formula just compute Euclidean distance. So it will be just a D. Mahalanobis distance improved the computation of Euclidean distance by adding a covariance matrix and inverse version into the middle of this, and then let this to control the values at the end. So with this covariance matrix plug in here, what you will see is, for example, the distance from those points to the center is the largest. If you compute the Euclidean distance, you may think, okay, this one here to the center has the longest distance. But because this control of the covariance matrix here, and you will get the largest value from these 2 points as outer layer from the cloud. Well, those distance to the center will not so significantly different from others. So this is one of the usage of this covariance matrix, but we will see in its application in PCA in other fields. Okay. So this illustrates if we have a covariance matrix which is not so skewed, then those data points 2 and 1 to the center are the same distance basically. But if you have other points which located, it's not so uniformly distributed. There are some covariance between x and y. Then the point 2, this distance will be much longer than this distance you compute using Mahalanobis distance measurements. So that's a formula to help you understand. So now this distance from 1 to the center and the 2 to the center are the same or similar. Although it looks like if you don't have the background or this cloud of data, you will consider, okay, the distance to point 2 is much longer than 1. Well, in this case, they are the same, and the 3 will stand out as the largest distance. So there are some applications in this Mahalanobis distance computation. Okay, so at the end, I will quickly go through this QC report. I will show you the bursting transcription. So Cell Ranger will generate HTML report, and then in the web summary HTML file, it gave you the number of the cells and the quality of data measurements, and also the coverage per cell, library diversity, et cetera, information. These are examples, okay? So this data is only have 2,000 cells, and this is have 15,000 cells have been measured. And then you see this quick drop of this separation between empty droplet and the droplet with cells. Very clear cut in the middle. Then there are other data. So there's some numbers on the sequencing quality. There are barcode information, the shape of this curve, as I said. So when you see this gray, and that's where by default, the cell ranger will consider those droplets with the cells, and this with UMI count below certain kind of cutoff, and all this droplet, even though there are barcode information in there, because there's no much information of the UMI, so you don't have a gene information, so this will be considered as a background, as empty droplet. So we don't want to have elongated separation. We need to have a very clear cut between this, so this quick drop is a good indication. Well, that's in this region. This depends on your cutoff. You can see, okay, I need more UMI in order to consider non-empty droplet. You can set up a cutoff to 5,000 instead of 500 by default. So there are some cutoff you can select in order to tune the stringent of your criteria in order to select more cells or less cells. There's no just very general information. So this is a figure I want to show you. This is not single cell data, but it's a measurement of this called calcium imaging in live animals, and this video I want to show you. I want to convince you that gene expression at a single cell level probably will look like something, this sparkling. Their activation goes on and off for individual cells, not always uniformly express certain genes. So the functional gene is supposed to be looks like this if you have a direct measurement of the expression level across time. Single cell data is not a time series, so you don't have this live image. But I want you to consider gene expression, especially some transcription factors and with function, its expression somehow looks like this. It's not always constitutively expressed, but it's expressed sparkling and theoretical. So that impression will help you to change some of the analysis, some of your understanding or thinking about the noise of the data. Okay. Again, this is not a real gene expression, but I just want to show you the active pattern on your mind. You should imagine the gene expression at the single cell level is somehow like this. Okay. So there's some fundamental theory about this transcription bursting. So if you follow one of the genes expression in single individual cells, you may see it's switched on, and then after we'll switch it off. Their frequency of magnitude may change from gene to gene, but in general, you should have something like this. So that's why it's very hard to see, okay, whether you observe a gene not expressed in that cell is because of sensitivity of the technique is not enough. So you have a dropout, it's technical noise, or it's really it's bursting, and your cell for that particular gene at that given time, your measured expression is just shut down. So it's a real noise. But it's hard to tell. So you need to have some kind of understanding of distribution of those noise in order to have those. So most of the pipeline will ignore this. So they just treat all the zeros at a dropout as a insensitivity, incapacity of the detection. I don't think that the rest of this is important, but we will play with all this quality control metrics to in computer session to see how we select those cells, which depends on the cutoff of the. There's an interface which you can use to select those. All right, that's all for this week, Tuesday lecture. Questions, quick questions. Okay, if not, we see each other. Oh, by the way, have you received the notice for the homework? Okay.